Oops. Okay. Here are people logging in. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Gala webinar. My name is Isabella Massardo. I'm content strategist here at Gala. And today's webinar is presented by Paula Ferrari, Chief Operating Officer at Go Global Consulting. And she will explain how her organization implemented ISO standards to add value to the company, but without losing agility. And she will also briefly comment on the main concepts of ISO 9001 and 17100 and how they impact the culture of continuous improvement. Now, Paula has an impressive curriculum. She graduated in 2003 with honors as an English-Spanish translator. She worked first as a freelance translator, specialized in life sciences, and then started sharing project and client with her colleague and a current business partner. And as project became larger and more challenging, they decided to incorporate Go Global Consulting. And in 2016, 17, and 18, her company was named among the 10 largest language service providers in Latin America by Common Sense Advisory annual ranking. The company has evolved, and so Paula herself has evolved from a linguist and entrepreneur to a businesswoman. In 2013, she obtained a postgraduate degree in business management and marketing from, let me see whether I can pronounce it correctly, Universidad Argentina de la Empresa. And in 2018, thank you, she also achieved an MBA from the IAE Business School. Paula, welcome. Welcome to Gala. And I leave the floor to you. When you're ready, you can start. To all attendees, just a reminder, we have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to use the chat box to submit any questions that you might have for our speaker. And I invite you to do so throughout the presentation as you think of them. So here we go, Paula, good luck.
Okay, thank you so much, Isabella, for the presentation, and everybody, thank you for joining us today. So we are going to talk about agility and how to implement ISO standards without losing flexibility in an LSP. That's the promise. So where are you joining us from? And if you're in Europe like us, like Isabella and I, how is the heat wave treating you? You can just respond in the chat box. Okay. I see some friends from Brazil, Portugal. Okay. So our agenda today is going to be about around these topics. What is Agile and its framework and application in an LSP project management environment? We will try to talk about ISO 9001 and 17100 and how to implement them with an agile vision. I will go through 7 quality management principles, which are defined actually by the ISO standards, and will be combining with the agile concepts, and some final thoughts and conclusions that have to do with the productive tension in a learning organization and, well, how we adapt and evolve. I will try to make this as interactive and dynamic as possible as an online webinar permits, because it's so hard to, see the feedback. I will have some Slido questions in the meantime. Also, well, we'll try to make some questions and from Córdoba, Argentina, that's great. And make it, as engaging as possible. So please participate so that I don't feel like a crazy lady talking alone. Okay, so here we go.
Paula,
Yeah.
sorry for interrupting. There was a message from Mario, says the chat is disabled. Apologies. I'm trying to
Yeah.
find out why, but in the meantime, send your comment through the Q&A box. Thank
there's
God
a Q.
we have, thank God that we have a Q&A box as well. Thank you.
Yeah, someone from Colorado. I love Colorado and the mountains, by the way. So I wanted also to invite you, if you did not attend, to check out the previous webinar I delivered in 2020, which is called Agile Management and Beyond. Or you can also read the related article, Agile Management for LSPs, Real World Applications for Innovation and Growth. Basically, in those presentations, I focused on Agile from a management and leadership perspective. I strongly believe that nurturing an agile culture is essential for creating the conditions for what we are going to talk about today. And today's presentation is like a kind of double click on how we apply such vision in the operational workflows and processes combined with ISO standards. But as you can imagine, if the organizational culture is wrong, no strategy will be working at all. So culture is key and will kill any strategy. Well, I love Pac-Man. I was a child in the 80s, and culture is always top down, you know, even if you do not work on it consciously, a culture will emerge and exist in any organization. So we better, you know, have control and work on it. So what is the Agile framework? Agile doesn't mean working faster. In any case, it means working smarter. It means being flexible and being able to adapt to change quickly and to respond to it. And Agile, sometimes it's confused with the different methodologies. It's not a single methodology. It's not a recipe itself. So there are many methodologies for different applications that fit into the Agile framework. For example, Scrum for software development, or design thinking for solving complex problems. And one important thing is that in all the Agile organizations, technology is part of its DNA. And we as an industry, as a language services industries, we are digital, you know, and technology is part of our DNA. We are not technological companies, but we innovate and we evolve with technology. And another characteristic of Agile organizations is that they are global, and we are also global, competing in a global arena, which can be a threat as well as an opportunity. I always like when we think about those SWOT analyses that threats can also be converted or thought about as opportunities. For example, you know, we have competitors, not only for clients, because we compete for clients or for talent now more than ever, and in our local markets, right? But we can also convert that threat into an opportunity by entering other markets ourselves. So being able to adapt to change, I think it's very important to survive in this super competitive landscape. And Agile is a culture of commitment. Commitment exists when there is engagement with the purpose. So communication of the vision is essential. And there is a lot of focus on the relationship of the employee with the organization. It's also a culture of goals. So we need to work in order to ensure that there are shared goals, values, and behaviors in the team. So individual, departmental, and organizational goals should all be aligned. It is also a culture of ownership. What does ownership mean? It means not waiting for others to act. And in the day-to-day, an ownership culture is when you see employees taking initiative, solving problems, demonstrated leadership even at, you know, operational levels of the organization. And for this to happen, trust is needed, transparency is essential, and transparency both of information, when, for example, we share the financial information of the company and of the decision-making processes. It's also a culture of proactivity. A proactive culture is one in which we can anticipate before problems arise. And well, the reactive culture is the other way around, right? And when you have the feeling that all the time we are putting out fires, when that feeling prevails, well, it's not a proactivity culture what we have. So probably you have sometimes felt that way. And it's also a culture of autonomy, which means less micromanagement and more trust. But this sometimes is confused with lack of support or guidance, because when we have this culture, this agile culture, always communication, making the employees feel that there's always a lifeline and that the leader is there for support. So otherwise they will hesitate when something goes wrong, and when they need to make decisions, especially difficult decisions, and that take them out of their comfort zone. And I think this is very important, but also very difficult in a remote work environment that many of us are right now, or hybrid work environment. Okay. So this week was Kino's anniversary, so I wanted to share this one. I don't know if you know her. Probably my friends from Brazil, they know her because she's very famous in Brazil. Here in Spain, I'm in Madrid, Spain, by the way, too, but I don't know in other countries. Well, Isabella knew her. So this is, what she says here, the urgent, as always, the urgent things do not leave time for the important things. And I have this. Actually, I have here, she's here in my desk, to remind me of the importance of building a proactive culture in the organization. And the team is always as strong as its weakest member. So when recruiting new team members, we have to make sure to hire first for cultural fit, and I think then for skills. And yeah, you love Mafalda, Isabella. Yeah, me too. Okay, and what is an agile operation in an LSP? It is adaptation. Processes should be flexible and should be guidelines that can be adapted. And the team needs to be encouraged to focus on customer needs instead of the traditional ways things have always been done. Project documentation should be prioritizing 20% of the instructions or the documentation that makes 80% of the value. So linear. And we need to understand the purpose of the project in a very clear way. So that's why for an organization to master this continuous change, the vision needs to be very clear. An agile operation in an LSP is also characterized by a continuous localization concept. There are a few webinars and presentations at Gala around continuous localization. Basically, for this to happen, we need to convince clients to involve localization earlier in the process, not at the very end, which is the tradition in our industry. And this is one of the reasons sometimes, or many times, that the deadlines are not reasonable or underestimated. Traditionally, translation and localization reflects the waterfall process, which are linear, sequential processes. That's why the name, think of a cascade, in which the customer requirements are gathered at the beginning of the projects. And the important difference is that in waterfall, a project is a fixed and linear plan, and everything is mapped out ahead of time, and customers interact only at the beginning or at the end of the project. And whereas in the agile method, it's an iterative process where new requirements may be injected into the project, and we may have customer feedback sessions during the project. So pushing small requests with automation and content connectors, particularly in order to avoid minimum project fees so that clients will adopt this approach. So we need technology to support the continuous localization. And well, these types of integrations with client platforms is key for this. But what is also needed is to change probably the mindset from the waterfall where we charge minimum fees and per word rates, and moving into different type of business models. So that's, you know, one way to go. But we can do many other agile things in an operation, not only continuous localization. Also, to have a decentralized decision-making process, we need teams with ownership, of course, and committed to results, but this process with less micromanagement is needed. And well, the benefit behind all this is that you know, tools and processes can go out of date real fast, and it can be overwhelming, and sometimes we may not have the internal resources necessary to keep all the documentation of the processes up to date, step by step, in detail. And you know, as an LSP, especially the ones who are growing and being successful, more than ever, we handle complexity and complex projects. So I think it's quite impossible to have everything documented in detail. So on the other hand, if we focus on a learning organization, we will see that talent, well, it will never stop growing when this culture of agile operation is nurtured. Okay. So think of the organization as a living organism in an adaptive system, and well, that's the idea behind this. So, okay, now we have, I have for you some questions at slido.com. So you have to go to slido.com and enter this number. Let me know if you are there. And I have the first question for you, which is, how many platforms does your operation team use? By this, how many platforms I mean is to how many platforms they actually log in, your project managers, your team leads. Consider Microsoft Teams, Google Workspace, TMSs, file repositories, vendor portals, everything. So let's see. Okay, there we have. I love this integration. It's very agile. So yeah, so the number more than 4, yeah, for sure. 3 or 4, that's a paradise. No one logs into 1 or 2. So the number of internal tools can be overwhelming. I don't know if that happens to you, but yeah, it's like we continue adding more and more. So we really need to look out for integrations, because I think it can get out of control. So there are great solutions with different ERPs to build these integrations if needed. Well, I think it's a great time to be running a company, because there are solutions that a lot of solutions that can be overwhelming, but at the same time, there's like a democratization of this that not so many years ago was only allowed for large corporations. And my suggestion is, when we analyze the ROI of these integration investments, is not just look at operational efficiency, which is, well, how much PM time we are saving, considering, I don't know, the median salary or whatever KPI you may look at, but do not forget the cost of opportunity, which is the PM doing other stuff. And also that, well, PM availability is often one of the bottlenecks in the LSP. So that's how I sell these investment projects internally, you know, because they cost money, and we really need to analyze the ROI. So in continuous localization, we are connecting about, it's more about connecting to your clients' content systems, but also our internal integrations can make the operational workflows way more agile. Okay. So I have another one just to learn a little bit about you, which is if your company is ISO certified, and you can reply with the word yes or no, and then you can also, oh, I'm wrong. You can also type in another word, which is what word comes to your mind when thinking about ISOs. So I give you sometimes, yes, you are typing.
I see people are typing. I'm very curious
Yes.
about the answers.
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Fantastic.
Yeah, nice. Okay, we wait a little bit more. Yes, most of you are certified. So yeah, continuous improvement is one of the main concepts beyond compliance. Yes, of course, the idea is that we have a red tape. Yeah, that's bureaucracy, red tape. It's what we are trying to reduce with this. Fantastic, and it's great to see that you're already super acquainted with the ISOs, because I'm giving for granted many concepts around it. So now, if you are ISO certified, which is the case for many of you, is the non-conformity documentation integrated in your main ERP system? So as you know, non-conformity is a failure to meet a requirement, and well, defining the problem, determining its cause, and taking action to prevent it from happening again. Also, measuring the effectiveness of the action taken. So I ask these questions because I have seen some ISO implemented, but not lived, in the day-to-day operations. So non-conformities and improvement opportunities, part of them in external documents and not integrated in the management system. The same I've seen for customer feedback, which is okay. We collect it in service or like not structured data. So then it's impossible to take out and do some data analysis behind it. So yeah, this is something to consider super early in the ISO implementation with an agile vision, because otherwise unstructured data will be impossible to analyze and to follow. Okay, well, thank you for participating. Okay, cool. So ISO with 9001 with an agile vision. As you know, ISO 9001 focuses on the quality of an organization as a whole by implementing this quality management system. And this is a standard that can be applied to any kind of industry. So for such reason, it is quite flexible, and it can be implemented with an agile vision from the beginning. So it's applied when an organization needs to demonstrate the ability to provide products and services that meet customer and regulatory requirements. This is the definition of quality that sometimes is confused with linguistic quality, but this is actually to comply with the requirements. And it aims to improve customer satisfaction with the application of the system, including process of continuous improvement, as someone mentioned in the poll, and assuring that this conformity to customer is complied with. So one important aspect to define when we implement the ISO 9001 is to define the scope of the standard, because you can apply it to just a business unit or a service in particular, or to the organization as a whole. So this standard, I think, will only add real value when applied to the organization as a whole and not to something specific. Now, that is harder, of course, and that's why also the recommendation is to start with this one and not with the 17100, which is, on the contrary, super specific. And regarding the ISO 9001 implementation with an agile vision, one of the very important things, in my opinion, is that directors, owners, or C-levels are involved in this. This will make a whole world of difference because those are the people that have the vision of the organization. Because the vision will be there, and I have seen some ISO implementations delegated to middle management or to external consultants with no industry experience, and the results can be quite bad because the standard is just implemented, to pass the audit, and processes are isolated from the everyday life of the organization, and this is work that doesn't add value in a way to the organization. Okay. So now we are going to look at 7 quality management principles, which are actually defined by the standards, but I will try to make them more agile. So engagement of people is one definition of a quality management principle. So this is essential, competent, empowered, engaged people. The cultural aspect when registering a non-conformity is super important. Otherwise, people will avoid registering non-conformities if they see non-conformities as a punishment or like the focus is on the responsible person. And yeah, I still recall Fishaw's Transperfect CEO keynote presentation at Gala conference. I think it was in Boston some years ago. Where he said, of course, among many other probably more interesting things, but this is one I remember, that he measured that the good health of his organization by how fast the bad news went up and reached top management. And you need the proper culture for this to happen. Customer focus is the second quality management principle. So the main goal of the standard is to meet customer requirements and to exceed expectations. This is the essential definition again of quality. But thinking about this with an agile mindset means that we need to collect constant feedback, or try to collect, and in different ways, constant feedback during the project and not only after delivery, to understand if we are really meeting the expectations, because we may give that for granted because we say no news, good news, but that's not the case. And also the service to customers are not enough. Marketing experts will tell you that people will reply to a customer satisfaction survey only if they are super happy or super angry, nothing in the middle. So you need to try to engage in different types of channels and conversations with customers to get this feedback. And of course, also measuring client retention or lifetime value of clients in the company, so as to understand if the organization is retaining the customer confidence and how that, of course, evolves and improves eventually. Okay. Leadership, well, in a traditional way, ISO talks about leadership is, okay, top management sets the vision and the strategic goals, and people will follow. So with the agile leadership, the main focus of top management is only communicate the vision and then enable the best environment so that there is more freedom of action, even in the setup of the strategic goals. That has to be collaborative. So agile organizations are more horizontal and less of a pyramid, and they also talked about the inverted pyramid. I talked about this concept in the previous webinar. And of course, process approach. This is the core of a quality management system, documented and interrelated processes. So understanding how these interrelated processes works will enable the organization to optimize its performance. That's great in theory, but for some companies like ours that manage complexity and we have so many different kinds of projects and customers, I think it is quite a fantasy to set and keep updated very detailed processes. So we often see this mental, I often also see this mental model with ISOs, and especially when we involved for certification professionals that come from more like an industrial background or not much knowledge about industrial, I mean, you know, companies that produce products or highly regulated industries. Of course, they have this mindset of documenting every single step in the process, because that's the way towards optimization, because people will just follow a rigid process. So this is the opposite to agility, where we want autonomy when facing different requirements or changing requirements. So something I always say to my team is we need also to remember that when something is documented and communicated one time or two times, it doesn't mean that it's well communicated or that it's adapted by the team, or that it's lived by the team in the daily operations. So constant communication, constant support is really essential to develop trust and autonomous team. And this can be challenging and not so difficult for. And talking about documented processes, there's a concept in Agile that I wanted to share with you, which is called the minimum viable bureaucracy. And it refers to all of this, you know, to having just enough processes to make things work, but not so much as to make it complicated, particularly when we apply this to a program or project management. So if you want to research about this, the cases are Mozilla and Spotify, that these companies made this concept very popular because they could scale agile project management. Another way of looking at it is that seeing your organization as not as an army, you know, but as guerrillas. Okay, cool. I still have number 5, improvement. Okay, improvement. We were talking about this focus on ongoing improvement. And from an ISO traditional or standard traditional continual improvement, you handle this with internal audits, management reviews. Everything is always very top down. So if we want to do this continuous improvement process, which is of course super important, we need to look more into interdepartmental reviews in order to foster more collaboration across the different teams, and less formal audits and reviews, which are more top-down. I would like to eradicate the concept of audit because it gives the idea of control and supervision, but I haven't been able to do so in my own organization. So still, you know, trying to find the way we name things also in a different way, and focus more on collaboration and team review. In Agile, the concept is that we are in a constant vita, learning and improving all the time, but errors are like a source of learning. Another important quality management principle is evidence-based decision making. So we need to make decisions based on analyzing the data and information, and that is of course more likely to produce desired results. It's very important to analyze the root cause of problems, and there are different techniques and tools that can help you with that, like the 5 whys, the fishbone diagram, or the Pareto chart. I will show you a few of them because I think it's more agile than just you know, writing this down in text or in Excel sheets. So this is one I really like. It's the fish. This is for root cause analysis, the 4S, the fishbone diagram tool. adapted to service companies. So the 4S are systems surrounding skills and suppliers, and then you just think about the sub-causes, and if you're lucky, you will get to the root cause of your problem and learn from it. Also, the 5 whys is one I really like. It's not just 5 questions beginning with why, but each question should lead to the other, to the next one. So I explain this because sometimes I've seen it wrongly interpreted. So, and there are more tools like this, but this is more agile than just, you know, writing down stuff. And talking about decision making, I wanted to share with you this framework. I don't know if it's a tool itself, but how we handle effective decision making. Besides decentralized, we have to be effective. So we first, of course, need to analyze the root cause of problems with an objective evidence-based approach. And this applies also when we make decisions about corrective actions, what we're going to do at operational level, but also this process can be helpful for higher level decision making. So to have an agile process for decision making, it's what gets things done. That's why I think it's very important and key. Because when decisions are slow due to the organization bureaucracy or centralized, we may destroy value because, well, everything moves so fast nowadays. And this is unnatural. It's natural for people to expect to be told what to do and to avoid making decisions, even the small ones. So I think at any level of the organization, the key is to have at the same time a general vision and focus. And this is what will enable people to make decisions. And this is why communicating vision is so important. Also, to understand the paradigm or the mental models that we have as humans, because as you know, those are the lenses through which we filter the reality. And also the importance of values here. This is a bit philosophical, but well, values are what move us to action and we will see this more clearly in difficult decisions, what values are behind those decisions, but actually they are behind any decision. And so the idea of this tool is first to write down the relevant facts, not opinions. Let's say, for example, you need to decide on an investment, yes, no, or a third alternative. Then define and separate the different criteria. A criterion not considered initially will become a future challenge. So it's key to avoid evaluating with just one criterion. So different criteria could be operational, cultural, economical, the risk we are taking. So define the alternatives and analyze them, give them a weight against each criteria. And always we need to remember that any decision will have a trade-off and we have to live with that. And always I say, try to find a third alternative when possible. That sometimes it's not so easy to see when we see everything as black and white. And then decide and define the action plan and keep the decisions, because again, if we are executive, that's the only way to make progress and get things done. There's a moment to well discuss the diverge, but that we need to converge. And something that I think it's very important for effective decision making is knowing yourself, knowing your team. If they are more Hamlet, you know, paralysis of analysis, a man of inaction. You know that throughout the plane he is always procrastinating his goal of killing or not killing and revenging. Or Othello, the opposite, rushing into actions due to emotions and poisoned by the devil. So who do you identify more with? Maybe you can tell me there in the Q&A. If business owners and people who take risk are more like identify with the second one, but it's always to have like the balance, you know, in the company and both type of decision making people. Okay. And there was one more, the group of interest. The relationship management is also important, and a quality principle, a quality management principle. So the latest ISO 9001 puts more focus than the previous version on the context and interested parties. This is usually part of the management review that established by the 9001. And this is aligned, with the Sustainable Development Goals that seek to reconcile the triple bottom line: economic growth, environmental, and social progress. But even if we look at it from a purely business perspective, interested parties influence the performance of an organization, and sustainable success is more likely to be achieved when the organization manages the relationship with all the interested parties. So in LSPs, the relationships, of course, with vendors, freelancers is key for success and should be part of the strategic goals and actions. And also the change in risks and context, like disruptive tech or macroeconomic context, should be mapped at least once a year to decide if we want to take some action around it. And so I wanted to share this type of tools. One is very well known for the map of risks, the heat map. So I think, again, this type of tools are more agile than just, describing the risks. So just to reply in the chat box, if it's enabled, I don't know, but what type of risks do you identify in an LSP? If you can reply, I don't know if you can reply. What are the typical, risks we could be mapping? Well, I thought, the typical talent shortage, well, the typical, at least the last years, headhunting, crisis pressure, and the macroeconomic ones, inflation, exchange rates, all these macro factors. Also diversification of the portfolio per revenue and per profit is another risk we should be mapping at least once or twice a year and deciding if we're going to make some action on it or not. And also a method to map the different groups of the organization. So basically we have on one axis the importance of the stakeholder, and on the other the influence of the stakeholder. So we need to pay attention to group A, which is high degree for the organization success. So we will have to really work on this group of interest, which could be shareholders, high management could be put there. You can also let me know which other type of groups of interest you could put there. And group B are those that have little or no influence but significant importance. So these are usually the ones with a low voice. So after the recommendation is mapping the interest groups and also according to the importance and influence, and design a strategy, of course, to improve the relationship with them and the impact in the organization. Okay, and talking about, as promised, a little about the ISO 17100 with an agile vision, as opposed to the 9001, which is very ample. The 17100 is super specific around the requirements of the translation service itself. So that's why I say the recommendations first go for the 9001 and then this one. And it has to do mainly with the workflows. If I tend to simplify things. If I have to simplify this ISO, it's just 2 points, in my opinion. So it focuses on the workflows and on the people selected to perform those workflows, which are the competencies and the qualifications of the professionals. So to implement the ISO 17100 with an agile vision means to understand that not all projects in an LSP will fit into this, simply because it's very rigid. So, and that reality, as not always is known, should not affect the certification. So from an auditor point of view, The important thing is to correctly document in the TMS or in the project management system if the project is ISO certified or not. And also communicate it properly to the client in the quote or in the order confirmation if the order is compliant or not. So this is, how we solve this at Go Global. From the order side, this is Plunet. We have a tick which is ISO compliant. So that the workflow connected or implemented will comply with the ISO requirements, and this allows us to be certified as well as agile, because we have the flexibility if certain projects simply do not fit in the 17100. And from the resource size, we also have the ISO property, so that when the order is ISO compliant, only the resources with this property will be appearing and will be able to be assigned to such projects. Also, when collaborating with other LSPs, sometimes we are requested to present blind CVs because because they are also ISO certified, and this is like the workaround many LSPs found for making sure the competencies requirements are met. And this is a very anti-agile practice because it creates a lot of bureaucracy, and especially, when they are asking availability and blind CVs, and how can anyone, us, make sure that those could be the actual linguists in the project? So our agile approach for this is that when we subcontract with other LSPs, we request that they are ISO 17100 and that they declare the order is compliant with the standard. That's why a standard exists, right? Because if we know that the other company is certified with this, we need to trust and understand that they are doing this workflow and all the complying with the requirements. This can limit the number of LSPs we can work with, but makes more sense in terms of agility and reducing bureaucracy. Okay. Cool. And as in life, I think nothing is black or white. It's in the grays that we can find the most interesting approach to all of this I've been talking about for 47 minutes, right? It's a long talk. So certifying ISO standards can add more processes and bureaucracy to the organization for sure, but the key is to focus on those processes that add real value, and also to be creative in the approach of the implementation so that processes can be agile and still compliant. This is a vision, a north we have. So the organization should not be adapted to the standards, but the other way around. The standards should be adapted to the vision and purpose of the organization. And it's totally fine to have some tension with the consultants and ISO auditors in order to achieve this. And again, it's not a matter of standard processes or agility, but how both coexist in a productive tension that will move the organization towards the most difficult changes, which are the adaptive ones. And a final thought and quote I really like is the concept of the learning organization, which is an organization that it's continually expanding its capacity to create its future. So we want to run an organization that is great at creating and transferring know-how while adapting to the change and changing to what it can learn. And in this changing world, which is being disrupted all the time by technology, pandemics, wars, you name it, it's not about what the organization knows or its current know-how, but mostly about what the organization can learn. That's my final thought for this. So here we are for questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Paula. That was very interesting. And first of all, let me apologize to everyone. We found the tech issue that was causing the chat to be disabled, but unfortunately, because the session is already ongoing, it's not fixed, but we know what it is. So apologies to everyone. I see that some questions came in through the QA box, but if you have other questions, just raise your hand and I'll open your microphone and you can talk directly with Paula.
Yeah, I see one. The chef is asking.
Yes, I'm gonna open Jeff's microphone, maybe.
Okay, cool.
Jeff?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I got a lot of experience doing this, really agile, but I was just wondering, what's your kind of the range of time, amount of time average, or a range that you've seen it takes teams of a company to go through the internal audit cycle to prepare for an external audit? What's your kind of feeling of the time it takes? I know how long it takes me, but I'm just wondering how long you found it times to do.
Yes, it depends on how well implemented and how the organization is living with the standard on its daily operation, or if it's running against the clock to get ready. It shouldn't. In our case, it takes just a couple of weeks to be ready. 1 month the most, but because it's I mean it's really implemented and integrated in the everyday system and how we operate in terms of cycle to prepare for the external audit. Yeah, maybe when you have to do every 3 years a recertification, which is like a deeper audit, you may take double of the time. We went through that last year, but in the normal audit shouldn't be more than that. How long does it take you?
I can do it in 5 30-minute sessions. Never started, but I've industrialized this and made it, gamified it. So I've got it down pretty well, and I've been through hell in the previous companies doing it. So I can learn how to do it, but I've got it down so it's really simple, really easy to use, really agile. And I've done it with like 15 or 20 teams where they had never done it, but it's working pretty well. But I just want to have others have done it, what it takes. So I can get everybody ready in about 4 weeks, but only 5 30-minute sessions. So, and then they got to do their homework. They got to do their work too. I mean, it's not just the sessions, but just kind of want to have others doing it, what time, because everybody says, oh, it's too long, forever. And I said, no, it's not. You got to do it right, make it fun.
I mean, when I say few weeks, it's like total time, but it's not that someone is full-time devoted to it in a couple of weeks, of course.
Yeah.
So Mario here said a very nice constant technological disruptive competitors appearing in the landscape and our slowness in adapting to ISO to it. Yes, totally. Yeah, it's all the time we get new competitors and we need to be fast to compete.
Yeah, I opened Mario's microphone in case he wants to make other comments or ask you questions.
These companies cannot be ISO certified because of the way they work, and the client.
No, he's working. He's in
in
another symphony. Don't worry. No, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's very interesting point that he made, and that's.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just saying because the clients in the end don't seem. Well, it's how can I say? Whether you say relevant, I know that you can select a few processes to be ISO compliant or not, but ideally the whole company should be ISO compliant, and the processes that we adapt to change and to disrupt competitors that don't even try to be ISO certified. It's not their philosophy. They're more like a mix of an IT company versus with a language component. And that's been something that maybe is going against companies that are certified with ISO. So I think maybe it's really about like keeping up and recording everything that you can in your mind to suggest that could be open to ISO certification, like post-editing has been and things like that. That's my only concern is it still worth doing? It is maybe for your own sake, but I don't know.
I think it's worth doing, especially if you scale the operations. I think it gives like a nice framework, but of course the right balance is needed so as not to lose flexibility and adaptation to change in the organization. So it should be something that makes the company slower. That's in the end, I think, the thing. So any other
Yes,
question?
there is there's another question from Anis. Let's see whether I can open the microphone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I come from a highly regulated manufacturing industry. So do you have any advice on how to change my mindset to be more agile in the language service industry? So my advice maybe is from the experience with these tensions that I had with our auditors and external consultants. But in the end, you know, it works. It's like we need to understand that we are not a laboratory or a pharma that really we need to do everything, but we also handle complexity, and so it's quite impossible to document everything as you do in the highly regulated environments from I mean, it has nothing to do with our industry, the language services.
And there's a comment from the PM team that said they wanted to reply to the Hamlet Othello question.
Okay.
And now I'm curious. Guys, I'm going to open your microphone, see whether you can or want to join the conversation. Hello, PM team. Okay.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Great. No, I was thinking I'm in between. I wouldn't say I'm Othello, and I'm not in a position to. I mean, I'm PM manager, so I'm not in the position to actually act, to take these big decisions, let's say. So I tend to be more like Hamlet and ask the other members of the team so as to guide me whenever I don't know what to do.
Yeah, that's fine, but try not to be paralyzed by analyzing everything or expecting someone to tell you what to do. The idea of agile operation is that even at operational levels or at middle management and level, which I believe is your case, like team lead or middle management, to develop more autonomy and take the risk if you decide wrongly. Of course, you need above a leadership that will support if something is wrongly decided, but otherwise the organization will be slower if everything needs to be consulted and there's no autonomy. But the question of Hamlet or Othello is super important for self-knowledge, to understand what's our own tendency and, well, try to work with it, you know, so as not to be so biased. And probably the owners or the entrepreneurs are like super fast and in making decisions, but that's also not great. You know, if you are just following the instinct or the emotions. So
that was great. Thank you so much, Paula. That was very interesting. Yes, and thank you to the PM team and everyone who attended and asked questions. It was very interesting, Paula. And the webinar was recorded, of course, so I'll do a follow-up email, send you the link to the recording, but I'll also include the recording of the previous webinar that Paula did in 2020, together with her article on Agile. So you might want to dig deeper into this topic. This is the last webinar before the summer break. So we're going to take the month of August off, which means we'll keep working, but at a slower pace. And we'll be back in September with 3 more webinars. Please take a look at the events page. And we also have the Gala Academy in September, which is going to be focused on vendor management. So I'll include all the information there. Paula, once again, thank you for presenting at Gala. Please come back, let us know how things are going. And to everyone else, have a good day, good evening, depending on where you are. And I hope to see you at another Gala webinar after the summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.